All right, Faisal, we've gone 1 minute over the hour. Do you want to start, or would you like to wait for a few more participants? I see we have 34 on, but there should be like
we give another
100.
minute and then we start. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I think we can start.
All right, great. Thanks everybody for joining today. So I'm happy to introduce Faisal Fatlamola from Sudan, and he's the Data Management Plan Project Leader for the H3A Bionet. So I'm so glad Faisal reached out to us to want to give this training. So, and we had a lot of interest on it, just over 100 participants expressed interest. So without further delay, let me hand over to Faisal. Thanks, Faisal, for joining and for agreeing to give this workshop.
Thank you, Rwanda, and your team for organizing this workshop. As you mentioned, that there is over 100, and then instead of postponing the others for another month, we say let us give the lectures and then divide the tutorial in 3 different days. So tomorrow there will be tutorial, and those who will be attending, about 35, they already notified. The other will be notified after this lecture.
Yes.
So my name is Faisal Muhammad Fadlmoula. I'm the co-BI for the H3 Bionet at the University of Khartoum. I'm also the head and founder of the Center for Bioinformatics and System Biology at the Faculty of Science, University of Khartoum. So this is the outline of my talk. We will give what is the learning objective with this session, what is the background, what is the data management plan, why we manage data, research data, component of typical data management plan, and then metadata and biomedical metadata, and then the data archive and repositories, and what is the best practice in developing a data management plan, and then other considerations that we have to keep in mind, and then the element of data management plan, and then writing. Nowadays, there is online on automatic tool that can help you to draft the data management plan, and then later on you can refine it offline and then attach it to your presentation. There is also a nice articles in the computational biology about the 10 simple rules for creating data management plan, and we will see how we can relate it to the data life cycle when you are writing your data management plan. And then conclusion, and then we talk about how the tutorial will be look like. So the learning objective that you have to know that after ending this session, you should be able to understand what is the important purpose of the data management. And then, as I said, identify the component of a good and effective data management plan, and then be familiar with the data management plan policy of different funding agencies, because different funding agencies have their own policy. And also you have to align with your own institution policy, as we will see later on. And then how to draft the data management from a project description that is will be in the tutorial. We will give you a project description, and we will give you 45 minutes with the facilitator, and then you come back and report to us how you will draft the data management plan, and then we will give you insight about where you go, where is the strength and weakness of your drafted data management plan. And then the toolkit, as I mentioned, there is online tool that we will show you. It can help you in drafting your data management. So the background is that the National Institute of Health, or NIH, define data as recorded factual material commonly accepted in the scientific community as necessary to validate the research outcome or result of finding. Most funded biomedical research nowadays use technological platforms to generate novel data, or also work on existing data to do analysis to get insight of the research that can help in the promotion of the health or any climate change or any wherever your research is concerned. So research data define the data and material generated and need to be covered within the data management plan. Some people, as we will see, it has to be from the proposal phase. But as I say, it's better to come late than not to come. Even if you are working now on a project, it is time for you to go and write a draft data management plan. You can send it to us, We can look at it and then give it to your BI. Say, this is the data management you have to include. And the data management plan, as we will see, is a dynamic. It can change along the course of the project itself. So it starts to be the data management overall umbrella is an integral part of biological research, especially that they getting larger with the genomic and bioinformatics era. So biomedical science, they're following similar trend to the physics, where they have large data set. Every day we are learning from them because they are the one before us, before the genomics starts. And then we have to follow what is the lesson learned we have to learn from them in using in genomics. So what is data management plan? If someone asks you, is data management plan is a dynamic, it's not a static, meaning that it can be changed along the line. It is not a Bible. You can change it. That tell how a researcher will collect, document, describe, and share and preserve the data that will be generated as a part of the project. So as we will see here from the data one, the data life cycle, you plan, you design your project, you collect data, either a novel data as we will see, or existing data, you can reanalyze it. You have to make sure the quality, ensure the quality of the data. You have to describe it, preserve it, discover, integrate, and analyze it. And we will come later in this one and later on in more detail. So why manage your research data? Because you have to meet, as we mentioned, funding agency requirements. They can't give you money and then without knowing what type of data you are going to collect, how you're going to collect it, how you're going to store it, how you're going to preserve it, etc. So also, when you write data management plan or any data research within your proposal, that will give you a more asset in the competitive grant application, because they know you are better than the other. You know what kind of data you are going to collect in advance and how you are going to collect it. So keep that in mind when you involve in writing a proposal. It give you also credit for your data and increase its impact and feasibility. Because when you have a nice proposal and then you work hard and generate the good data, analyze it and publish it, you will get credit, people will get to know you, and they will love to work with you. So that you have to keep it in mind. And then also it encourages discovery and use of data to explore new research question, because research is a cumulative process. You start from where other people end, and then find the gap and try to explore it, and then you add more and more, and then other people will come and start from where you end. So also it improves your data accuracy and completeness and usability, because from an advance, you know what data you're going to collect it, how you're going to collect it, what is the accuracy of this data, how you can measure the accuracy, usability, accessibility, all these things you see it from the start. And now while you are doing it, as I mentioned in the last slide, is a dynamic document. You can go back and correct something along the course of the project itself. So also, why you manage your research data, because it ensures long-term preservation of data for the future researcher. And that is the funding agency would like to see that in your project and in your approach. So what is the component of a typical data management? There is 5 parts. What type of data, as I mentioned, you want to collect or produce during the project, and the process or methodology you are going to do analysis on them, and what is the format for the data and the standard, and then the availability of the data, including information about the ways in which the data will be accessed, and whether there is any issue related to privacy or intellectual property. All these things you have to think about it when you are drafting your data management plan. And then also the guidelines, either guideline, procedure, and policy from the funding agency or from your own institution. You have to follow that, because if you say this is the institution policy and this is the funding agency policy, and then they will respect that your institution got to have a policy and procedure and guidelines. Otherwise, you don't have a reference if you have a problem where you refer to. So also the measures that will be taken to help ensure the long-term, as we said, preservation and access to the data, including factor as format migration. If you want to migrate your data from one platform to another. You need to know from technical side, you need to have people who know what is the previous format, what is the new format that you are migrating to. Then you have to align your data according to that during the duration of the project and even after that. So also metadata, when we say metadata is data about data. In other words, it's information to make your data independently understandable without you coming and explain to the people. And the other thing, sometimes there is embargo when you have a data in the archive and people can't access it until the group process it and then publish it. Then they can access the metadata and then they have an idea if this really what they are looking for, or they have to look for some else for their intended data. So keep in mind that you have to in your project and in your data management plan, you have to mention that what type of metadata you are going to collect. So the basic metadata element is the title of your project, who create the date created and the format, the subject, the unique identifier, and we will come to that, the digital object identifier, UI. And we will, even when you are doing fair for your data, you need to have unique identifier. And then description of a specific data resource and coverage. Publishing organization, if you already publish or intended to publish. And type of resource, right, license, physical approval from your local or your local institution or your local Ministry of Health, or and funding agency who fund you. So people need to know that also. So metadata standard also, or sometimes the standard is called a schema, consists of a specific element you use to describe or document your data. Different disciplines have got different meta standards, so keep that in mind. If you are working in genomics, there is a specific metadata standard, and even within the genomics, different tools, different techniques, they have different standards. So you have to keep that in mind. So we come to the biomedical metadata. As we mentioned, metadata is a structured information that describe, explain, locate, or otherwise make it easier to retrieve or manage any information. It's often called data about data or information about information. So in biomedical metadata, an example for metadata that you keep track on is the reagent, the clinical sample, biological reagent, cell line for people who are working on cell line. Sometimes you can't have a tissue every day when you're working in cancer. So it's better to work on cell line until you have a good result, then you can work on the real tissue. And then the antibodies, the chemical reagent, and even the drug, all these are considered as a biomedical metadata. Technical data also, instrument and associated software. Experimental data, example the conditions. What is the S type, NGS, and NGS, it is RNA-seq or exome sequencing or whole genome sequencing, etc. And then the protocol itself and the experiment that used to generate the data. Because all this information will help the people in the dry bioinformatics when they analyze the data and when they make an interpretation for the data. Analytical metadata, information about data analysis, method included software name and the version. Version is very interesting because sometimes even when you access something online, you need to give the name of the date you access it, because when reviewer is reviewing your article or manuscript, they need to know exactly, because if something changed, you are not going to be responsible as far as you would the name. The same thing with the software. Different version can different has got different format or different outcome. So make sure that you write the name of the software and the version, and also what is the quality control parameter. If you are working in the NGS, what type of parameter that you use to measure the quality of the reads and the output file, bound file, or other files. All these you have to mention it in the metadata. And also, as I mentioned, it will help those who are accessing the metadata to get to know your data, which is now in the embargo phase. This is the data I'm looking for. The more comprehensive you are, the more people will access your data, and then they make use of it. So also there is best practice in developing research data management or research data management plan itself, because the research data management is the big umbrella and data management plan is under within it. So you need to write a plan as part of the academic research process. And the best practice nowadays for the data management research data management is that you have to develop a data management plan. You need to consider how, where, and when you are going to store your data, and how you are going to do the documentation, the ethical issue of the project itself. When you collecting sample from the subject, you have ethical issue, consent form, and then you have ethical issue about the data itself. Who is going to access it, and when is going to access it? Do you have any other? As we will see, we will go and turn on, and then sharing the data. When the time within your project course, when people can share the data and access the data. So as I mentioned, the data management plan have to adhere to the guidelines set by the funding agency and your institution that are sponsoring the research, because you have to be attached and to an institute, and then the funding agency, you have to bring a letter from that institute. They can offer you all the facility and access to this facility to conduct your research. So you need to follow their guidelines. And then good advice also is to complete your data management earlier, not to leave it sideline at 1 day or 2 days before the proposal. Okay, and also some people think that the data management plan is cannot budget. You have to budget it, because as you mentioned, you have to store the data. All these things need money. So nowadays, most funding agencies, they consider this data management cost, like the data creation, processing, analysis, storage, sharing, and preservation during the project as well as after the project. So you need to have to put it in the project. That's why we say you have to start from the early, when you have an idea of the research and you design your objective. You have to think about the data and how much it costs. If you don't know, go to the technical people in university and ask them how much, and it have to be up to date, the cost, not 2 years ago, and then you come back to the funding agency. Oh, this increase. It can be increased, but not highly if you do your homework. So remember that the funding agency accepts this cost in grant, as I mentioned. Nowadays, they accept this cost while you're drafting it. It have to be integrated within the proposal. So if you want it to be integrated in the proposal, then your data management plan have to be drafted earlier as possible. So what the best practice we have to follow for the data storage? Why we do data storage? Because data can be lost in a format or in the hardware. So remember that you need to know the type of the data that you want to generate. NGS, for example, they bring you read in FASTA-Q, and then you have to do you use different bioinformatics tools and workflow to work on it. So as we mentioned, the data storage, you need to know what type of data. Do you need a server? Do you need access to the cluster, high-performance computing, or do you need access to the clouding? All these things you have to consider because you are going to budget. But also you have to consider the type format of the data. It is a plain text document, or it is RTF or text, or it is CSV, TCF, Excel, image, all these kind of things you have to go deeper. You're not going to say this is the type of data I'm going to generate, but in what format you are going to use it. As I mentioned, you're going to, people used to have a CD-ROM, but now you have large scale. The CD-ROM can accommodate this high capacity data, so you need to go for clouding and high performance clustering. So also when you name in your file, try to be consistent and descriptive. That means If I come or you left the work and someone come after you, from the naming he can figure exactly what is the content of this file instead of just going on and find a software to read it. So be very consistent and straight in when you are naming your file. And always remember to back up your data locally and remotely, because locally something might happen in the local, in your PC or in the local, but it has to be externally, remotely, another server. They call it, people in IT, they know you have to have a mirror of your data somewhere else. Okay, and then you have contingency plan. That means plan that if something happens, how long I'm going to store the data. People have to know. The more you think about this, the more people will know that you are a technical person. You know, if something happens within 6 hours, 5 hours, we are going to restore the thing to the normal that before we lost it. Data documentation also, as we mentioned, you have to use the, metadata to record detail about everything in your the context, the data that you generate, collect it, the method that for data collection, and this is a different for social science they have DTI, for ecological metadata they have EML, and then the Federal Geographic Data Committee they have the digital or also geospatial data, a different one. So in your area you need to know, as we see for the genomic later on, we have the European genomic and phenotypic archive and different. So you have from the start with your BI, get to know where the data, or if the funding agency dictate to your BI where they have to keep the data, then they have to follow that. Ethical issue, as we mentioned, especially for us, we work in health sample with patient, etc., with collaboration with the medical doctor. There is sensitive information about the patient, and that shouldn't be deposited in the public archive or repository. So you need to give a number, and then only the BI or the two or from the research team they get to know that and keep it in a cabinet, and nobody have access to it. And also access the data may need to, as I mentioned, to be embargo 9 months or 12 months until the people finalize the analysis and publish their data. Also, the ownership. Who is the owner of the data? It is the funding agency or the BI or the institution of the BI, or the intellectual property right. If along the line you discover something, if that intellectual property have to be belong to the funding agency, to you or your institution. All these things you have to consider from the start, because often people have problem and conflict after the thing happens. Researcher also front consent from the sponsor, from the subject that you are doing research on it, and that you have to uh, inform them what the study about in very plain context without using technical words. Yeah. So also some universities, some faculty, as I mentioned, institutions have their own guidelines. They have their own ethical committee. But if you want to send the sample outside after the institution, you have to get also from the federal ministry uh, approval for that thing, and they have their own ethical form. You have to fill and complete and follow their guidelines also. So here I bring health science researcher. This is a good link for you to look for the in general. If your institution don't have ethical committee, you can start it. You can raise the point from now that. And the good thing also, try someone from your institution who is knowledgeable in the domain of the ethical research to be also member in the ministry, because that will make life easier. Because most of the time the delay of the ethical, because nobody on the domain was selected within that committee. That was the delay, because they need to have someone from outside and ask him to come and review that one. So make that sure from your institution there is someone who is sitting in the board committee, which makes life easier for you and for others. Sharing data. So as we mentioned in the life cycle diagram of the data one, sharing data is very important because as I mentioned, research is accumulative. You start from where others, and then you add something to the community, and then other people will go on. So while you are sharing your data informally by emailing to other researchers, yeah, some people email is not enough. If you can forget your email, yeah. So that's why people they have the archive where things will be there. So this can be informally just in the middle of the thing when the data is very small, then people can share it. But it's better to put it in website or archive. Then informal method of sharing is difficult to find data to access. It's better to be archived within your institution or regional archive that you can. When you deposit your data in data archive, it's much better option. Why? Because preservation of the data and future discovery and use of the data. Nobody have access to your email, but people can have access to the data even if you left the university or you get another job, whatever. Yeah. So this is also the same on open access directory. This is the archive. It is maybe more important to deposit your research data in a discipline specific. So if you work in climate change, look for a specific repository for climate change, and then you join that club and deposit your data over there. And RE3 data it is a research data repository. It is general one. But as we mentioned, most of H3Africa, they send their data through H3 Bionet archive to the European Genome Phenome Archive with the EGA. It is permanent archiving and sharing of all type of personal identified genetic phenotypic data resulting from biomedical research projects all over the world, including Africa. The other thing we have to consider while you're drafting your data management plan is, as I mentioned, there is embargo date. You need to know how much is 9 or 12 months, it depends. And then in the meantime, your data is safe, well documented, and available to you and your team. And after the embargo, it will be available to all peers. Some people ask the question, do I retain copyright? So depositing your data repository does not affect your copyright ownership. And this is have to be in the contract when you sign with the archive. The problem is that like when you are using any software, we download it and there is agreement and all people, they say, I agree. Please read that agreement because sometimes it will be against you in the future. So have a habit that of reading the contract before you sign it. So depositor can specify condition. Also, you can put the condition that secondary user must adhere to when accessing deposit that. Some people even, they ask, there is a form. They put it in the archive center that whoever going to access the data, they have to fill that the form, and then the owner of the data, they have to assess it, and then they say, okay, give them access. So all these things you have to consider. And data are not only stored for research, teaching purpose only, not for commercial purpose. Yeah. So this is have to be mentioned very. You can't share data to commercial. There is another agreement. We can't say not, but there is another agreement. Not like they have other agreement and legal guideline and policy how to share it. Not like a normal academic purpose. So what kind of research data can be deposited? A wide variety of data from different disciplines. As we mentioned, there is a specific discipline archive and depository and this repository that you can think of. So here, this one is the element, is the checklist. When you are drafting your data management, this is the kind of data that you have to look for and you have to check at the end. Did I put the description of the information to be gathered, the nature and the scale of the data? All this have to be, yes, it's recommended. And where is it in the data plan? In expected data. and existing data, because sometimes, as we will see later on in a diagram, that you can either generate a novel data or you work on existing data. Or also, you have to do a survey of the existing data and think if it is relevant to your project design, and discussion of whether how this data will be integrated with a new data or not. And this is recommended, and where is it? Expected data. So I'm not going to go in detail, but this is checklist that I will send the presentation later on, then go over it and mentally, because tomorrow would help you when you are drafting your data management plan. The format also, as we mentioned, the data format, NGS, BAM file, anything like that. The metadata, because as we mentioned, there's embargo, that, and also the first step. I look at the metadata and have a feeling if I need the data, and it is because I need to fill a form to access the data. The metadata will give me like when you read an abstract for an article, it will give you a clue if this is the type of data or the type of paper that I have to read all of it or not. So it is yes recommended, and then it is data format and dissemination section of the data management. So I'm not going to do in detail as I mentioned. The storage and backup also, we mentioned it. You have to have a remote backup for your data. It's recommended, and under data storage and preservation access, security of technical and protection for information, confidential information. As we say that we're working on genomics, we're working on patient and human and control, person, healthy person. We need to 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 protect them from being them to be disclosed, and this is recommended. And then data format, destination, responsibility. You have staff within your team, research team. You have to identify in the data management plan who is responsible for the data, generating the data, who is going to store the data, who is going to analyze the data. So all this kind of have to be mentioned in the data management plan. Intellectual property also, you have to predict from, if you have to say, put a scenario, if something it's covered, who is it, who got the intellectual property for that invention, if happening. Also, recommended access and sharing, we mentioned it, audience. Most of your audience are secondary user of your data, because you are the primary, your team and the people in the community, uh, uh, you are the primary source of the data. So there is people who don't the audience of your data management. You have to identify and predict who is going to be your audience for this. Selection and retention period, description how data will be selected for archiving, how long the data will be held, and plan for eventual transition or termination of the data collection in the future. This period of data retention and then archive and preservation, audit, as I mentioned, you have to consider. Okay, because you can't generate data freely, you can't store data freely. You have to consider all these kinds. Ethical and privacy, as we mentioned, a discussion of how informed consent will be handled and how privacy will be protected, including any exceptional arrangement that might be needed to protect participant confidentiality and other ethical issues that may arise. This is yes, data dissemination, data organization, quality assurance, especially if you are working in the health in all data, you have to ensure the quality of the data. But you have to have a metrics and parameter to make sure that the data of high quality. And then the legal requirement, the list of federal or funding requirement of data management, you have to consider, as we mentioned, either for your funding agency or your own institution. You have to consider. So this is the checklist. So this is you have to consider it, put it, print it. This is the checklist that you have to, and it gives description for all section that you have to write in the data management plan. So as we mentioned, there is online tools that can help you to some extent, which some people sit programmer with the domain expertise, and then they put the guidelines, and then people program it in the software, and then when you click on the software, it will give you what NIH or Wellcome Trust or National Science Foundation that you apply for. And then when you select that one, all the upcoming and consequent question will be related to guideline and policy of that funding agency. They are not 100%, but to some extent they can help you. So there is one in Canada, Origin Network, developed online to help Canadian academic research. There is data management plan assistant provided step. This is link. And data management tool. This is the most widely used one. This was released in October 2011, and it can walk you through if you are newcomer to data management plan. But it need this one. I think it need you to register with them. So try to do that this afternoon. Get to know and have the feeling what kind of question they ask. So as I mentioned, this was a collaboration of multiple institutions, including the data one that the first diagram, and then that will help you create ready-to-use data management plan for a specific, as I mentioned, funding agency. It meets the funder requirement for data management plan, and it gives you step-by-step instruction and guide for your data management. Learn about the resource and service available at your institution also, and to help fulfill this, because it will ask you. They don't know about your institution, but there is a question. They collect the answer from you, and then at the end they will give you traffic. This is not the end of the day. You can't take it alone. You have to refine it offline, but it can give you just the first version of your data management draft. Okay, this is, as I mentioned, there is a publication in 2016, 10 simple rules for you can have the access to later on when I send the presentation out. In the PLOS computational biology, 10 simple rules for creating a data management plan. So rule number one, you have to specify to mind the research sponsor requirement, either your funding agency or institution. Rule number two, identify the data to be collected. Rule number three, define how data will be organized. And then rule number four, explain how the data will be documented. And rule number five, describe how data quality will be assured. Okay? And then present a sound data storage and preservation strategy. You need to have a strategy, how you are going to store your data, as I mentioned, in a server, local server, in a high performance computer, or in cloud. And all this, it needs money and need costs that you need to integrate in your proposal. And then the rule 7 define the project data policy. And this, you have even the policy of your own project, which is also your own institution policy or the funding agency. And then describe how the data will be disseminated after you finish. Are you going to present it in regional, international conference, or are you going to disseminate it to the subject themselves to let them know? And then rule number 9, assign role and responsibility. As we say that the project have staff, either a graduate student or project lead or project manager. They need to, their role and responsibility have to be described in the data management plan. And then, as I mentioned, rule number 10, prepare a realistic budget. Then let us see here in the same article. This is the research life cycle. You have formulate ideas and hypotheses and design your study, and then you acquire the data, and then you analyze and visualize and make interpretation, and then you publish and disseminate your result. This is the research. This is the data life cycle. So what happened here in this one? The one in the yellow is the one before. So this will help you even tomorrow in your tutorial. So when I plan my research, I need to know rule number 1, 7, 9, and 10. And then you plan in is either you collect a new data and organize it, or you are reanalyze existing data. And then after that, if you know with data and even existing data, you need rule number 2 and 3. So to make life easier, I combine them together here. So when I'm planning, I need to research sponsor requirement, number 1, and 7, define the project data policy. And then number 9, assign role and responsibility of my research staff. and then prepare a realistic budget for my data storage and etc. As we mentioned before. And as we mentioned, you can go to existing data or create a new data. And then after that, you need 2 and 3 here and 7. So 2 and 3, identify the data to be collected because this is new data. Define how the data will be organized. Even the existing data also, you need to identify within the existing data, identify data that you going to be collected and how to organize it. And then in the existing one, you need to define project data policy. Okay, and then you go assure the quality of your data. Unit number 5, describe how data quality would be assured. So this, I think, try to read the paper today before the tutorial. For those who have tutorial tomorrow, for the others, they are lucky because they have time to read the paper. But study, don't go in detail. Just get to know what is rule number 1, where they discuss the things because it will help you in drafting you. But in the future, try to print this one and stick it in front of your computer. It will help you because the more you look at it, the more it will stick in your brain, and then you are not going to forget anything. So this diagram with the checklist, try to print it and always consider as a reference to go back to. Okay, and then when you describe your data, use your data. So what we did, we aligned the data life cycle with the 10 simple rules, which here are considered in yellow. But when I put yellow in the PowerPoint here, you can't see it. That's why I put it in. That I tried to be matching, but it was not successful. So just consider this is the same, this one, and then go ahead, and then I hope that you will draft a nice data management plan from now on. So also this is one of the slides uh, I guess we have been working on it during the annual meeting for H3 Bionet, and I just get an email 30 minutes before the start that this have been uploaded in the website of the H3 Bionet. We have link and resource that can help you in all in data management plan. The link is here, H3 Bionet. You can click on this one, the last one here, and it will give you a lot of link and tools that we collected during the last 2 and 3 years while we are working in the data in this project. So this is my lecture is 2 parts. This is 1 part, and then we will go for the next one after we can have a short break. So in conclusion, for writing an effective data, provide general description of data that you expected to produce over the course of the project, and please consider the following: a brief, non-technical description of the data. It doesn't have to be technically, including the code or software, and then if the proposed research involves obtaining data from other resources, also provide a brief description of the data, including its content, the source, any particular condition for obtaining this data. Describe plan for redistribution, any derived data product. You can work on existing data and then you do further analysis on it. And then you have to redistribute it and let people that you work on existing data. And if you also generate a new data also, then you have to also to mention how you generate this data, what type of instrument you use, what type of assay, and all this indicate which data you will share at this stage. Raw data, processed data, or analyzed data. And then describe why data you will share will be of interest to the community, because you can't do a research for the sake of the research. We are in the biomedical research. Our research has to have impact on the society, should have impact on the patient. So things you have to consider. And also data management plan should provide your project members, funders, and others with an easy to follow roadmap. So just consider your data management plan of your project is a roadmap that guide anybody, not only you, anybody work with you, and the funding explain how data are created throughout the life cycle of your project and after the project is completed. And finally, even if one is not required by your funding agency, make it a habit and practice to develop a data management at the beginning of your project will help inform the best practice throughout the research. I would like to acknowledge my co-lead of the project, Dr. Samir Banyi, and NIH and H3 Bionet and H3Africa workshop organizers. I think we will have a break, and after the break, we can talk about the tutorial, and then I have another, if you have a question before the break, I'm ready to take your question. Yeah, we will send the slide later on, don't worry. Yeah, good day. We'll send the slide. If there is any question, before we go for a short break, 10 minutes, and then when we come back, we talk what is the tutorial for, and then we give a bonus lecture about fairness, how your data can be fair. Yeah, the presentation, Wafa, Rashid, and the others, I was just seeing the comment. Yeah, and I think also Rhonda, I think she sent you the 10 simple rules. Please try to read that one. It's very nice. It's 10 simple rules for creating a good data management plan. So, so I even took that from the paper. The thing that I present, it is from the paper here. So you can find more description for, I guess, give you the overall. But it's very nice when you are working on your data management plan. And then for those who have tutorial more, please read at least this part. And then, yeah. Yeah, so as I mentioned, all the rules, there is explanation for them. Identify the data to be collected, type of data, resource of data, and the volume of the data, data and file format, as I mentioned. Define how the data will be organized. I explain how the data will be documented. All this kind of sound documentation strategy. So I think while you are doing this, you will be expertise in data management. You will be your institution reference person for this kind of thing. Just try to grasp these 10 rules and all these things because it's not difficult, but it's more detailed. But if you grasp it, I think it will be easier for you. How long the data will be accessible? How will the data be stored and protected over the duration of the project? How will the data be preserved and made available for future? As we mentioned, there is embargo period. This is for the people who work on the project. They have to give them time to analyze the data and publish it, and then people will have access. And then define the project data policy. License, sharing, arrangement that pertain to the use of material. Plan for license, sharing, and embargoing, limiting use by others for a period of time, usually 9 to 12 months, but it's then legal and ethical restrictions to access the data, especially for the human subject, as I mentioned, because most of the time, the owner of the data, they need people to fill a form, what they need the data for, because they have to protect their subject. You can't have ethical clearance for a certain research and then you take the data and do other research. That is unethically and unacceptable. And then describe how the data will be disseminated. As I mentioned, do you want to publish? Do you want to present during the local, regional, or the national conference? And then people usually they present their data in the conference. because they need the feedback from people who work on the same community, research community, and then they make the refinement and then they publish it. So that is the same. And then you have to assign role and responsibility for each one. Treat your database as a live document, dynamic document, and revisit it frequently, as I mentioned. I make it in red, in dynamic document, not a Bible. It can be changed. Then prepare a realistic budget. Creating, managing, publishing, sharing high quality data is as much as of the 21st century is, is publishing results. Data management is not new, rather it's something that, but it needs budgeting for all these things because it costs money. So this is that I referred to, as I mentioned. For those who attend the tutorial tomorrow, at least try to read these ligands here in more detail. It will help you a lot in your tutorial tomorrow. So I think we will have 10 minutes break and then we'll come back to the.
There's just two questions in the chat box, one from Rashid Wafa and one from Sophia, if you'd like to address that before we break.
No, I think there is in the link that for our H3 Bionet. I think let me pick it again. We have link. You can go and there is a lot of link, and we will provide you with tomorrow. We will provide you with the welcome draft. They have a work example, and we will share with you examples tomorrow. Okay, but for H3 Bionet here, that the thing I mentioned here, you can have more in this one. Let me see if I can. Let me put it if it can open to me.
So is this the template?
Yeah. No, tomorrow we'll give you a template.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll give you a template to fill because we will give you a project description and then we'll give you a template to fill it. And then we give you 45 minutes with an instructor or facilitator in a different Zoom room. And then you come back to the common room here and then you have a repertoire, someone who writes the point and then report it back to the rest of us. And then we try to give you where the strengths and weakness of your drafted data management plan. And then at the end of all tutorial, we will send you the work data management because during the tutorial we can't give you the work example and the correct one. But we will give you our insight about the good and bad, and as I say, the good and bad and the ugly. I don't want to say ugly, but the good and bad of your data management plan. Okay.
So then there's another question from Binta. She's asking if the data cleaning and validation is part of the data management plan.
Yes, you need to mention how you are going to do it. This is including how to ensure the data quality. You remember when I mentioned the data one diagram, and even in the 10 simple rules diagram, there is part within the data life cycle. You have to make sure your data is accurate. There is the high quality accuracy of your data, and this part includes data cleaning and validation also.
All right.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, yeah. The link is there because I was informed 30 minutes. We sent it after the SSD binding, but now it is there. There is more even example for template from UK, from Australia, from USA, globally. There is example over there, and even there is something about research data management. That we'll discuss later in the second part after 10-minute break. Okay.
Okay, so we'll reconvene at 10 minutes past the hour.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Please be back. All right. Faisal, can you hear me? Faisal, can you hear me? All right. Thanks everyone for staying on. I will be coming back. So I think let's continue. Faisal, over to you.
Thank you. So just a short lecture is not that because even the data management plan, it have to be fair. We will see what is the principle when we say fair. Yeah, so how to make your data fair? This is just, I presented last year in Ghana during the data management plan in the bioinformatics conference. And I think I found it very helpful for you because you need also your drafted data management plan to be fair. What we mean by fair, as we will discuss, who the stakeholder for fair data, example of fairness tools that can help you. So by end of this session, you will be able to know what are the fair data principles, know the stakeholder of the fair data, understand real example of fairness, checklist repository that complying with the fair data principle. Though the background is that we need to follow good data management in our research, either funded or not funded. Even if it's funded by your local institution or your local Ministry of Higher Education, you have to follow a good practice in data management, not just for funding agency, international funding agency. So to facilitate good data management and promote open science also, open science that because most funding agencies now they call for open access, open data, open science community, and we have to promote these things. Uh, so FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and uh, reusable. And we will see this in more detail. So what is FAIR data? It's a set of principles to ensure that data are shared in a way that enable and enhance reuse by human and machine. So FAIR is a collection of guideline principles to make your data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So we will see in turn what all of this terminology means. So the FAIR principle put forth characteristics that data resource tool and all infrastructure and resources should assist discovery and reuse by third party. That means primary parties and then other people, like we mentioned in the last lecture, the secondary use of your data. They have to have quality data, accessible, reusable, and all these principles. So where the original fair is emerged from a workshop held in Leiden in 2014, it came from life science, but now it is all over in every field. So it's issued by something called Force 11 Community. It echo previous principle on open data and curation. So we will start with the first one, uh, fair, uh, findable. So there is about four element principle within the findable. The fair is findable F1, we call it, is metadata are assigned a globally unique persistent identifier. Remember, before when we say any resource, any data, any tool that you are generating, it should have unique persistent identifier, like the articles, they have DOI. So even if that was stored in a certain uh, archive of the university, and if it migrated to another, it have to keep that unique identifier with it because it's unique to that source, to that tool, to that article. And F2 that are described with the rich metadata, you remember? With that the more data, it gives more comprehensive to your data and let people consider if they really need the data and fill the form to access it or not. And then F3 metadata clearly explicitly include the identifier of the data is described. And then F4 is metadata are registered or indexed in searchable resource because you can't find your data unless they are indexed. They are registered in the archive repository and they have index because all the search engine, they need things to be indexed. Google, Yahoo, etc. If your resource data tool is not indexed, it will be difficult for the search engine to find it. So this is the fairest, and I put more text for you to, like the BID, identify unique one, and all this more text for explanation of this principle. Then accessible, they refer to it it's A1, A1.1, A1.2, and A2. So what we mean by A1? Metadata are retrievable by their identifier. So you need is link with the findable using a standardized communication protocol. A1.1, the protocol is open. You can't have A1 protocol without this protocol being open, free, universally accessible. Okay, and then A1.2, the protocol allow for authorization when necessary because sometimes and some of these archives they need user. You need to have a username and password to make sure that you are the one who they get your information in advance and then you can access it, not anybody else. So this is our accessible in A1.2. A2, metadata are accessible even when the data are no longer available. As we mentioned, you remember when we say there is embargo period. During the embargo period, the data is not there. You don't have access to it, but you have access to the metadata. So you can see that from fair principle 1 and 2, metadata is very important because it can give a comprehensive, give you more information about the data, even if you can't access it. And then you need to ensure integrity of the link across the web. So you can't have a link and then when I click on it, it not work. It means that you just create it and then okay, you are happy you create it. You have to maintain it. You have to keep the integrity of this resource tools and things that you are creating. And then interoperable, meaning that allow fair principle, include qualify reference to another metadata that mean can be moved to another platform. All of this interoperable that outline requirement for ensuring the data across database can be combined with minimal effort. That cross-linking of this data is very easy, not difficult. And then metadata include qualify reference to other metadata. especially for the genomic. Just think of it, you are working on genomic microbiome, and microbiome have a link with the variant genomic. These data have to talk to each other, and they have to have a link even at the level of the metadata. And even if you want to move it from one to other, it have to be with a minimum effort to be linked and combined. And then reusable. Uh, Metadata are richly described of accurate, relevant attributes. Those who are having information technology background, they need that any metadata have attributes. You remember when we talk about metadata, we say the title, who created, the date of creation. This is called attribute. So the more rich attribute you are, the more reusable your data will be, and your resource and tool that you develop. And then R1.1, data are released with a clear, accessible data using license. This is the license, even if it's free. They call it it's free, it's licensed, so and so. So, for example, if I make a presentation and I record it, and then the people who they have to take my consent that they want to publish this one, and even sometimes it can be free license, or sometimes, as we mentioned, commercial one, they have commercial license. So all these things to make your data reusable, it have to have accessible data storage and license if it's free, or with the money if you are working in a commercial company. Metadata R1.2 are associated with detailed provenance. And this is and for the R1.1, there is something called CCBI, license identify that the data may be reused without license. And this, in most of the, when you have sharing your video, this is, you can see this is material are shared by CCBI. That means I give it, anybody can reuse it. You don't have to call me or send me email to give you access to it. And then metadata meet domain relevant community standard. You remember that we say different archive, different repository, different metadata have their own standards. If you are working in genomics, you have to follow, your data have to be reusable, should have the domain relevant community standard, not to have a standard for genomic in the climate change or the vice versa. Okay, so this is the principle of the FAIR. And then we come to the, who are the FAIR data stakeholders? The researcher who want to share, get credit. They use each other data and interpretation. Professional data publishers, these are stakeholders of the FAIR. And software and tool builders providing data analysis and processing service as reusable workflow. It's also funding agencies, either private or public. So this all are the stakeholders are considered. So example of tools for fairness is the Dataverse, is an open resource data repository software installed in thousands of institutions globally to support public community repository of or institution research data. It's built by, now within Harvard database, they have more than 6,000 data sets, which is the largest of the current database repository, and is open to all resources, to all researchers all over the world in all fields. But it generates automatically. You can make copy of thing, and then you copy it, and then it come with the link. So this is kind of the thing that is, they have to make sure that you make citation for their thing. For example, following standard defined by Altman and King, this reference, make the digital object identifier. You remember this is, you can see it a lot in the article. If you are having an article and being published, they give it digital object identifier. This is unique. Nobody will use it again. Okay? Or other persistent identifier. They call it handle. Public when data set is published. Okay? So this is the example here. Dataverse work is an open source application for publishing reference extract extract and analyze data. The main goal is to solve the problem of data sharing through building technology that enable institutions to reduce the burden of the researcher and data publisher. By installing the database network software, an institution is able to host multiple individual virtual archive called databases for the scholar, research group, or journal, providing data publication framework that support author recognition, the system, etc. This is the link for it. You can later on, it is database.org. For researcher, you can click here and you see if it is falling under your domain, and you can find your domain for journal, for people, and all this kind of thing. So this is one example of it. The second example is FairDOM. It integrates SIG and open other platform to produce a fair data and model management for system biology. So this is a domain specific for system biology. So community worker in system biology, they have this one, and they want to make sure all the data generated for system biology are fair. Individual research uh, as it can be accessed over the website in the variety of format, RDF, XML, are annotated with these metadata using ontology. And the metadata are stored in RDF to enable interoperability, and as it can be downloaded to reuse. Uh, so you can see that more or less this fair DOM is giving accessible, giving interoperability, then findable and reusability principle of the fair. This is the domain of it. Also fair-dom.org. You can look at it later on. They have platform community. See if your domain within that community, and if you can prescribe with them, that would be good. So, for example, because we checklist to identify a repository comply with fair data reference. So what they usually do is that they have questions, and then you have to answer it. And then at the end, the tools, there is a tools, online tools. They have all these questions for these four fair data principles. And they ask you, for example, our data set, uh, single file, given global unique and persistent identifier like a DOI, then you say yes. If not, we will see an example. Uh, does the repository follow the upload author name content of the data set? Then if yes, you say yes. If no, you say no. At the end of it, the tool will give you if your tools or data or resource, what is the percent of fairness of your resource? Is it clear under which license? As we mentioned, there is CC0, there is CC BY, which is free. The data will be available. So this is a question, and you have option like CC0, CC BY, and then you select one, and then are the citation information and metadata always publicly accessible? This is element of the principle of the FAIR. So you can see here findable, and here there is accessible, and then does the repository provide submission from requested metadata in a specific format to ensure machine readability, interoperability. So all this kind of the truth is just an example of the question that when you use fair data principle, they will ask you all this question and you have to answer. And for each question, there is more than one answer. And at the end of the day, it will show you overall from out of this four principles of the fair how your data is fair. And this is a nice one because even tomorrow when you finish your data management plan, this is very small, each one of them for findable, uh, accessible, reusable, interoperability. For each one, they have 4 or 5 questions. So when you finish your data management plan also, come and use these tools and then answer honestly according to what you draft in your data management plan. I, I, my internet is slow, but if someone can try this one to access it, because I will try to access it, but my internet is not that. Yeah, I will try to see the link if it works. If not, I will send it to someone to work on it. Okay, can someone click this link and share? Uh, yeah, can you? Because my internet is not that
So
fast. Can you,
I'm,
yeah, can you
I'm,
click on it and share? Yeah. Yes,
I'm
I want to
trying
demonstrate.
Faisal,
Yeah,
but
okay.
it's loading. It's taking a while to load.
Yeah.
Oh, must be a big. Um,
Okay, we can leave it download and then I will continue with the rest of the.
I'll post it for everybody.
Yeah.
And they can also try on their own computers. Because on my end, it still says waiting.
Okay. Meanwhile, we just have to slide. We finish and then come back if it's working.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. To, so, so this using this tool will be able to access the fairness of a data set, even your data management plan. Yeah. So
Sorry, Faisal, can you put in slideshow mode?
yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So this is the while it's uploading fair self-assessment tool. So you can, it, as I mentioned, it I have question for each one of the four fair principles, and then you, if you answer them honestly, you will see the overall fairness of your data plan or any resource you have. The green mark will go to the right, and if you have more than 70 or 80, means that your data is fairness, more fair. So try later on if you have a good internet. I look at it yesterday, this morning at home. My internet was fast the morning, and I play with it. That I give some answer, and I have a nice over 80-85%, because I try to give different option for each fairness principle. And then, yeah, this is just a bonus. So we're not going to go in detail, but to let you know what is even your data management plan, you can apply and implement fairness principle. Okay, again, acknowledge and thank H3 Bionet and also H3Africa workshop organizers. Thank you if you have any questions. And then I will share with you, show you the template that you will have tomorrow. So we have this template for you tomorrow and for the subsequent date for the tutorial. So we will give you a description of the project, and then you work with a group of 10 or 13 or 15 in each group in different Zoom room with an instructor. Then try, one of you have to write. We'll send this today with the lecture uh, uh, materials. And then you have to fill, you have the description, you have to fill what is the project name, give any number for data management plan, because this have to be locally produced at your institution, 001 or 00 something like that. Who is your principal investigator? The plan data contact email of the BI or the data manager, and then the research topic. What is the research topic about? The institution. If you have ORCID link, that will be good, especially for the review of your proposal. They need to know. But I think in your proposal, you already attach your application and the date when you draft the data management plan. And then this is the thing that you have for the
Sorry,
description. Yeah.
sorry, Faisal, we can't, if you're sharing your screen, we can't see it. Oh, I can't see it.
Can you see that?
It's loading. There we go. Yes, now we can see.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay. So this is the plan project name. As I mentioned, for the data plan ID, maybe 001. This is your first plan. And then other project two, number two, whatever number you give internally. And then who is the principal investigator? Tomorrow you will just give, we will, it's not necessary to add it, but this one you can take it with you for real data management plan. This is template. For the tutorial group here, we have down here, for tomorrow, we have group one, group B. This is the group B1 and B2. These people who have background biology or biomedical background. We divide them into groups. And then those who have computer science and bioinformatics background, they are in group C by some different description. And then they work differently. They will be sent different Zoom room, and then they have 45 minutes to draft the data management plan from the project description using this template. Okay, so if you are in group B1, over here write just B1. If you P2, write P2. Okay, and then read the project description, and then start brainstorming with your within your group, and then try to fill this thing. What kind of data in your research base? What kind of data is your research based on? Type of data, source, format, roughly size. At this time, you don't know, but roughly you know from your previous experience. If you can't, just leave it. Okay, and then how will the quality of data will be controlled? You remember there is one question that someone asked if the cleaning and validation, it is part of this of the data management plan. How we are going to do it? Okay, and then number two is the ethical legal compliance with either funding agency or your own institution guidelines. What ethical issues are related to your data management? For example, in handling sensitive data like the patient data, uh, even healthy control, they are also sensitive because they include their name and address. You can't reveal it to anybody. Protecting the identity of participants or gaining consent for data sharing. How will the data ownership, copyright, and intellectual property right issue be managed? Are there any copyright, like in the description, if it is there, but by tomorrow it might not be there. But try to answer from your own experience if you work in research, what kind of, but in the real, this have to be discussed with your BI, and it have to be put here, because putting is here and attach it to the proposal. The funding agency either agree with you or disagree with you. But when you fill it here, you already read the call for the proposal or the grant. And from there, you answer this one. Okay? And then documentation and metadata. As we mentioned, the more comprehensive your metadata, it will make them findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, which is why I give this lecture of the how to make the bonus lecture, because it's part of the data management plan to make sure that your data also, you consider the fairness of your data. And then the storage and backup during the research period. Okay, and this is the heading, and this is the question. And even at the end, you can take the question out and leave the section only, the heading, and leave. But make the question there will help the reviewer that what you are answering here, because in this one there is two, 4.1 and 4.2, and then you write your answer underneath it in a smaller font, and they get to know that the bold one is the question and this is your answer to it. And then if it makes sense, they agree with you. If not, you will be in trouble. Where will your data be stored? And how will they be backed up? And we talk about the storage and preservation of the data in the various lectures. So who will be responsible? You remember number 9 in the rule of the 10 simple rules, rules and responsibility. Each staff in the research you have responsibility, rule and responsibility. So who is responsible for controlling access to the data, and how will be secure? They have to be here. Be secure. Will be secure access be controlled? How well secure access be controlled? Yeah, it's correct. Okay, and then number 5, opening, publishing, and archive the data after the research period, research project. Because after the research finish, you need also to let the funding agency know what part of data can be made openly available or published. Where and when will the data or the metadata be made available? So all this, and then where will the data with long-term value be archived, and for how long? So in most of the code, they have to mention that how long this data. If not, go to the program manager, because you have time before you submit your proposal. And each call have got a program officer. So you can ask them this question, or you draft something and send it to them. Give me feedback about what I'm writing here. Okay, am I right? Am I wrong? And then number 6, data management responsibility and resource. Who will be responsible for the specific task of data management during the research project life cycle? Estimate also the resource, financial, time, and effort. As we mentioned, we talk about the cost. Budgeting within to be integrated in the proposal. So this is the thing that I would send it out with the research to Rolanda to send it to you. Tomorrow you will use it when we send you when you give you the description. So here, as I mentioned, write, go. You will be given either you will be group tomorrow, either you are group B1, B2, or C2. Those on Monday on 28th would be also B3 case. So what we do also, we need to compare along the line how these people, different group, how they respond to different questions within the. We will make the analysis later on, and we will let you know. Okay? Is this correct? Is this all right for you? Is there something not clear? I'll share, and then I will look. I have a question. After finishing writing, I got fun. Then I finish my project. If my project include website that will collect data, my question: where do I share this? I mean, I wrote to get fun. Should I put this on? Yeah, you can put it in the website, because we call for open access, open science. The data management plan, other people might benefit from it. Other people who are going to work on the same area as you work, as the link for the H3 binding. That is, people they share it, and that is why we try in the last 2 years asking for H3Africa project principal if they can share their data management plan. If they can send it to us, and then we review it, and then we say this is correct, this is missing. Yeah, there is a lot of other consortium. They send their data management plan to me and submit to review it with Catherine to review it. So it's good practice, because like the article, when you write an article, there is a saying that you can't see your mistake. Other people can see your mistake, or you have your mistake. You hold your mistake on your back. Other people can see it, but you can see the other people's mistake. That is the fun of it. Give it to other people and they will give you insight. If at all I am use secondary data, yes, you remember in the Ferris lecture, if you attended the Ferris lecture, we bring the 10 simple rules, we bring the Ferris figures and make the alignment of the data life cycle with the 10 simple rules. And we say that when you plan your study, you can either go for novel generated new data or existing data. You need to have data management because you need to say, tell us where is this existing data, where is it, where is the source, and in which format, data, okay? Can you share it, Farina, the link for that one? I just want to show people the Wafa, it's my answer, it answer your question. Thank you, Peter.
Verena, will you share or should I share? Okay, great.
You should be able to see it. Sorry, I'm actually sharing from my phone, so I do apologize if it's not looking.
Can you go down?
No, it's fine.
Can you go down?
Just
Yeah,
let me.
Down. Yeah, here. So here, stop here. Go up a little bit. Yeah. So this is the total across all the findable, accessible, interoperable, and then reusable. And then you will see when you start, can you select the findable here? No identifier. Click this one. Can you click it or not? So whenever you select this one, you will find the top one will go green. Does the data set have any identifier? Aside, can you click one and select the fairest one? You see, if you start here, local identifier, you see that the top total across FAIR start to show green. And even if you go underneath your findable, you can find also at the end of the question, you can find it start to be green. Yeah, you see? Because your findable is part of the total fair. So it's given you here, and then you go for the next one. Is the data set identifier include in all metadata? You answer it, and then you go here, and it is reflected over all fairness of your resource or the data source. So you finish all the one, and then it will give you the total. It makes sum up of the four findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable one. Okay, go back to the accessible and select one or two and show no access. Okay, go to the select. Is the data available? You see, this is all local for this one. And then the next one is, you see, because you select better all of them 100% for the accessible. And then interoperable, you select also, and it will also give you green within this part of the fair principle. Yeah, then you go up to the top fair, it will show you the overall. Yeah, I think it's almost 40 pairs. Yeah, it can be, it's not even 50, yeah? The total across fair, not, there is something not selected. But the general idea, the concept, you get the concept. This is a tool can help you even for any data set, for resource, for a portal, for any tool that you build within your research. You can come here and overall. There is other who have more detail than this. This is just simple one for simple presentation like this and a lecture. Well, yeah. Any other question? And I think we just remind you, please fill the survey, the evaluation, because it will help us in improving the lectures and even the tutorial after the tutorial finish, because we need to assess the skill within the continent of the data management. This is a data management plan, but I think we are planning also to have lecture notes and lecture on research data management. I think we are on time. I think I put 2 hours because from my previous, they usually give me 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, but I say no, it is 2 hours, and then give even the fairness to be included. So try to read the 10 simple rules for those who are having tutorial tomorrow. Very scanning, very quickly. Go for the data management tools and see. You have to register for that one and try to see. And then we will send you the template that you fill tomorrow. We will give you the PDF for the 2 lectures. After this, I will send it immediately to Rolanda, and then he will send it to you. And I wish you all the best in the tutorial. And I hope we'll give you an introduction to the data management plan. Thank you.
All right, then if there's no further questions or comments, thank you everybody for joining today. So for those who have already received communication about the tutorial for tomorrow, please join. It will be on the Zoom room, but it will not be this link. You would have received your individual links. And those of you who will attend the tutorial next week, Monday, the 28th of September and the 5th of October, I will share those groupings right away. So those who will attend the tutorial grouping for tomorrow have already received communication about that.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
then.
you all.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Thanks, Faisal and
Bye.
Medina,
Yeah.
and for confidence for being on the call today.
Thank you.